Radical Radio Collective.
Good afternoon, listeners. You're tuned into 4ZZZ on 102.1 FM, and this is Eco Radio, Australia's longest-running peace and environment radio show. We are taking over your middle of the day in the middle of your week airwaves, and we are 3/4 of the way through the month.
Yep, 22nd.
22nd, I think
31.
I think it's about 3/4.
I think so as well.
Yeah. My name is Zack, and my pronouns are he, they, and I've got Issy.
She, they.
And then we've got the return of Dave.
Yeah. Thanks for having me back.
Yes, we love Dave. Everyone loves Dave. He was not the original eco-radical, but certainly the most prominent. That's what I'm referring to ourselves now and our
Eco-radicals.
The eco-radicals. Yeah. I want to start off by acknowledging and paying my respects to the custodians of the country on which we broadcast. We are located in the city Magangin on Turrbal Yagara Ugarapul land. I also want to acknowledge and pay my respects to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who are listening in today. Our radio waves reach Kabi Kabi and Jinambara country in the north, Waka Waka country in the west. In the east we pay our respects to the Quandamooka people, and down south we reach Commonberry, Nagaragwal, Munanjali, Wanjirabara and Yugambear countries. There is no Crown land. On today's program, we're going to be having a chat with Rebecca Appleton, who is a media spokesperson from the Bat Conservation and Rescue Queensland, and we're going to be talking to her about the flying fox paralysis syndrome that seems to be quite prevalent at the moment. Mm-hmm. Then we're also going to be touching upon some of the latest news, just a couple of stories there. And then we have the return of a segment that we did last week called An Ode to the Toad, except I actually have an ode to give to the toads this time.
I'm very excited.
Because Izzy and I went super mega viral on the weekend, in terms of eco radio standards at least, and we went toad busting, big haul that night.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yeah, it looked like a huge haul.
It was quite impressive.
Honestly, the worst thing about it, I want to say, was the fact that my biceps sore 2 days afterwards.
The pump that Zack got immediately after, because for those who haven't seen the post, we crunched the numbers. It was about 13.1 kilograms of toads that we caught, and you were carrying around 15 kilos, including the box, I believe.
Yeah.
Was it? Yeah. So Zack had a crazy pump afterwards, but we removed 139 cane toads from Tweed Forest.
That's great.
Yeah.
So
there were some big dudes in there as well.
I was just explaining to Max from No Idea about picking up some cane toads that were the length of my hand.
Yeah.
Or the length of a standard phone nowadays. Quite long and quite large. And it was interesting hearing, isn't it, the older that they get, the more toxic that cane toads become?
I think so, because they have more poison as well.
So there were some old guys here that we picked up. And also some much smaller ones as well. We got a really... The little ones were, cute, but we were we
showed no mercy though.
Yeah. Well, can you let the listeners know how you deal with toads once you've busted them, once you've taken them out of the environment, what the hypothermia freezer system looks like for putting them down?
So we kind of delved into that last week a little bit about some of the methods that you can use. But for this bust, Zack had a spare fridge, freezer just in his living room. So we used that. And we, after we took that photo, we had to bag all 139 of them
individually.
I think we did about
kind of 5 to 8. 5 to 8.
So because of the somewhat smaller ones, all bag them up and pop them in the fridge. And even after I think it took us 2 minutes to bag each one, when we'd open the fridge again, they'd all be very still.
Okay.
So they were already kind of falling asleep, already kind of going into that hibernation state. And then Zack, are they still in your fridge?
They're in my freezer now.
They're in your freezer. So migrating them across to the freezer.
Yeah, so how long does that take?
So it's 24 hours in the fridge and then 12 hours in the freezer.
And then they're kaputs.
Yes. I want to mention as well that there's actually, if you have done cane toad busting recently, there's a couple of locations that Watergum has where you can go and drop off those cane toads, and then they will use those cane toads to go and make their cane toad tadpole traps.
Yeah, and
that's really good too.
And I researched that further as well, just making sure that you're complying with Watergums. They have certain standards for the cane toads as well, so making sure that you aren't, I think it was something like no more than 2 layers or less than 2 layers of cane toads per bag, and making sure that you're not suffocating them. So putting them in, I think they said takeaway containers or non-returnable containers, so not your Tupperware, just giving it over so then their volunteers can just have the cane toads in one place, so don't bring them in like a grocery bag or something like that.
Okay.
So just make sure you're complying with Watergum's policies for that, because there are volunteers who then also have to deal with those cane toads afterwards, and you just want to make that as easy as possible.
Yeah, that's great info.
So, you're telling me subscribing to 4ZZZ didn't give you enough warm inner glow? Here's the thing, you could be like Ian. Ian subscribed to his business and chucked a $50 donation on top of that. Be an Ian and head to 4ZZZ.org.au to subscribe and donate today. Sounds like a good plan to me.
On the line with us, we have Rebecca Appleton, who is from the Bat Conservation and Rescue Queensland, and we're going to be talking to her about the flying fox paralysis syndrome that's been going on. How are you doing today, Rebecca?
Hi, I'm good. Thanks for asking. How are you?
Yeah, pretty good today. Just very sweaty, which I'm never fond of. Very suboptimal conditions for me being a Kiwi, but, that's how it goes sometimes, I guess. So I think probably the place we want to start off with is, could you just tell us what flying fox paralysis syndrome is?
So in terms of what we believe is causing it, we think it's a toxin that they're exposed to in their environment, which leaves them basically unable to care for themselves. It does result in death without intervention. Some of the symptoms that are associated with it are things like limited wing movement, which means they can't fly, they can't climb, they're unable to cool themselves, and they also can't protect themselves from things like rain and flies. They also have an inability to swallow and or limited or non-existent tongue movement, and some animals rescued even still have the food stuck in their mouths, so they've literally been eating and it has sort of hit them and they've been unable to do anything with the food that's in their mouth, and that also makes them unable to eat or drink. And they also have a lot of issues with their eyes because they lose the ability to blink. So we see a lot of things like weeping eyes, extremely dry eyes, or it progresses through to corneal ulcers. So basically it affects each animal slightly differently, but that's your basic set of symptoms, and it's just something that is happening to them out in the wild.
That's pretty severe. But this syndrome is found in flying foxes, and they found like a similar syndrome also in lorikeets. What flying fox species are affected by the syndrome, and have there been any other bat species also impacted by it?
So in southeast Queensland, we know that it affects predominantly black flying foxes. It also affects grey-headed flying foxes and little red flying foxes. We haven't observed it in any other southeast Queensland bat species, not to say it couldn't happen, but that's where we're seeing it, and it is definitely mostly the black flying foxes.
I think I was reading as well, it seems to be disproportionately affecting males. Are there any other flying fox demographics they're affecting more significantly than others?
So it is definitely large adult black flying fox males that we see more and more. I believe way back when we first started seeing this many years ago, they used to call it big boy syndrome in our group because it was always the big males. And the little reds, they are more susceptible. Their survival rate is not as good, and they're often more severely affected. So it is good that of the most affected species, they also have the best survival rates for treatment and care. And the problem this year was the sheer volume. There was a lot of females affected as well. So that ended up with us having to take a lot of babies into care, which we had to bottle feed and hand raise because their mothers, even if their mothers were able to survive, they were not able to care for those babies as well as get themselves through.
Mm. And you mentioned that this first appeared a couple of years ago. When and where did these cases and this syndrome start appearing in southeast Queensland?
So it's been reported in our group since at least 2014, from my understanding, but it was the exception, not the rule. There was a case here and a case there. I remember the first one I rescued because I'd never seen anything like it, but it has just been getting progressively worse. And so instead of just a few of them, we're now having this outbreak situation. And the really large outbreak situation started about 4 years ago, and it just seems to be escalating.
Are there any particular environmental cues that are associated with the disease, having an increased number of patients suffering from the disease, I guess?
Very much so. So it's usually after heavy or prolonged periods of rain and hot temperatures. We also generally see a lot of paralysis when we observe a lot of heavy fly activity, and also there's often a lot of birds and things within those colonies that seem to be unwell as well.
And how prevalent is the syndrome at the moment?
So this year has been the most widespread geographically and the most devastating for loss of life that we've ever seen. We were not anticipating anything like what has happened this year. I'm not really sure on what numbers and things that we're at because we've been working across multiple different groups, and we have not been able to rescue every animal. It has been, there's been way too many for that. At the moment, because it did just rain and is now hot, we're a bit fearful that we might see another outbreak, but we have only had dribs and drabs coming in for the last week or so. But in December, we got hundreds through the door. So first week of December, they sort of started trickling in here and there, and by the second week of December, we were absolutely inundated with animals.
And how, as an organisation, is Bat Conservation and Rescue Queensland handling this number of patients?
I have to give a shout out. We have the most amazing team of really dedicated volunteers, and what we have achieved as an organisation is really incredible. We have a 24/7 phone team. We have 24/7 rescuers. We have really dedicated animal care and management teams, and basically everybody just pulled together to put in a massive effort, and we continue to do that. The animals will be in care for many months yet. The majority of the activities to both save bats' lives and to ensure that there weren't bats left on the ground, which were accessible to children or pets or things like that, was all largely conducted by volunteers through volunteer organisations. And BCRQ, as a group, we have also worked with other rescue groups, including Bats Queensland and Wildlife Rescue Queensland, and a few councils, including the City of Mookin-Bah and Logan City Council, have been really helpful. And the RSPCA was also instrumental in triage of most of these animals. So there has been a group of people pulled together, and the assistance from the city councils and the Wildlife Hospital was much appreciated.
You mentioned treatment there, or how to care for them. What is kind of the timeline for that, and how do you go about treating afflicted individuals?
The basics of treating this are hydration, rest, eye lubrication, and good nutrition. The problem with that is it's a long time between when they come in to when they can fly again and when they can be released. And at the beginning of their stay, it is quite manual. You need to syringe feed them very, very slowly because they can't swallow properly. You don't want them to choke. So there is a fairly intensive period when they first come in, and then you have just continuing to give them really good nutrition, really good access to water, and a really important part of this is a cage big enough for them to rebuild their flight muscles and their ability to fly so that they can go back out. And the other not so glamorous part of all of this is the many, many hours our volunteers have spent picking off fly eggs and maggots and things like that to ensure that the animals aren't being further compromised while they're unable to care for themselves.
I imagine this is quite round-the-clock care as well.
Many of us have not had much sleep for some time.
Yeah, so I'm guessing you need all the help that you can get regarding those bats. So how can people support affected flying foxes and the Bat Conservation and Rescue Queensland more broadly during this pretty hectic time for you guys?
So the most important thing is calling in any bat you see alone, in the daytime or on the ground. Even if it's at night, if they're on the ground or hanging very, very low and not moving, we need to get a rescuer to them ASAP. So we have a 24/7 rescue line, which is 0488 228 134. The sooner people call them into us, the better their chances of survival. But more broadly, we always need more volunteers. And we do have roles for people that do not involve bat handling. You can work on the phones, you can help with things in the background. Not every role involves going out there and grabbing bats off the side of the road or caring for them. We've got options. Another thing that we really appreciate is just spreading the word about calling in bats for assistance, and also just sharing how amazing flying foxes are. They have a pretty undeserved and bad reputation, so the more we can get out there and show people how amazing they are, the better it is for us as rescuers, and the more animals get called in. And we do have Facebook and Instagram pages for Bat Conservation Rescue Queensland, where we share a lot of information about bats, how you can help, the sort of rescues we do. And lastly, we always need funds to continue what we're doing. All of these animals need a lot of food, and they take a lot of time to recover, so it does get very expensive buying all of the things that we need to keep them in care until they're able to go back out to the wild.
You mentioned that for people who aren't interested, who don't want to handle the flying foxes or bats, that there's roles in the background. But for people who maybe want to be a bit more hands-on with things, what is the training, or I suppose like qualification process to be able to start handling some of these flying foxes?
So we have an in-house training program that we run. We do multiple sessions every year. We have a lot of in-person training, and then we have online training options. You do need to get some vaccinations, and if you do join us, we can help you with how to go about that. And then we provide all of the training, and we also have a mentorship program as well. So just say you wanted to raise orphan flying foxes, which is probably the nicest of all things you could do for yourself. We have mentors who guide you through that, who you can check in with every day if you need to make sure that you get the skills that you need to do that work properly. And we have people on the phones who can always assist with rescue. All of our trainers are happy to jump in and help if anybody needs guidance. So we do have a pretty good structure in place to really support people to learn as best they can, and to feel really confident in their abilities, and to progress up to more difficult tasks if that's what they would like to do as well.
Did you have anyone else you kind of wanted to give a shout out to, or do you think is worth mentioning?
Well, I've mentioned the other bat groups and the councils that have helped, and the RSPCA as well. The RSPCA is fantastic with our bats. We see them a lot, and there are so many wonderful people in our organisation who have really put themselves last and put the bats first throughout the last few months. So I can't call out too many people individually, but as a whole, I'm really, really proud of our group, and I'm really proud to be a part of what has been a phenomenal and very unexpected effort.
Thank you so much for joining us today, Rebecca, and I hope at least you get some extra volunteers from this interview, and just everything goes a bit better than what it currently is.
Eco Radio.
Eco Radio.
We all know that capitalism needs growth to survive, but in a finite world you can't have growth.
Community gardens, downsizing,
News had just come over.
people power.
We had 5 years left to cry.
Eco Radio News.
News guy wept and told.
Yeah, so let's get into the news. The threatened species list has been updated. There's been 41 new additions of flora and fauna. So that makes there are now 2,245 animals and plants on the threatened species list. Some of the new additions are the pig-nosed turtle, which is threatened by habitat destruction and altered flood regimes brought on by climate change. The dusky sea snake. Sorry, Zach.
That's okay.
There's a snake on that list of threatened species. The black-tailed godwit, which is a migratory bird that comes to roost in Australia. And the Dalhousie catfish, Australia's smallest catfish.
That one upsets me more than the snake.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
I have a tattoo of a catfish on my chest, Dave.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Gotta let the people
It's
know
probably about the
that
same size as the Dalhousie catfish. They're quite small. So, new analysis by the Australian Conservation Foundation found that 25,768 hectares of habitat was approved to be cleared in 2023. That's one of the main reasons for species lost and threatened species in Australia. It's habitat destruction.
I think I saw the same article with that as well, and I believe it was the koala that had the most amount of threatened habitat cleared.
Yes.
In the same report,
Yeah.
And then I think with the additions of the 41 new additions to the threatened species list, most of that, I checked out the list, it was updated last year, so this is not like new, but it was updated last year, and there may be more already. The last time they updated anything was the 9th of September, I think, something like that.
Yeah,
4th
right.
September, yeah. Crazy that.
Yeah.
And I think Tanya, there was a spokesperson from the Department of Conservation and Environment who said they were committed to no more new extinctions, but this obviously proves to the contrary.
Yeah, well, they've actually got to do something to do that.
Yeah,
they can't just say, "Oh, we don't want any more extinctions," but we won't do anything to help.
They're just sitting there over there like manifest no more
just putting it on their vision board and not actually doing anything for it.
Well, we can make jokes about it, at least. You always got to laugh.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're going to cry.
You
That's
gotta
on my
laugh through
vision
that
board.
pain. Yeah, that's on your vision board. Zach, did you have anything for us?
So this one was a study that was released on January the 16th, and it was around bleaching of the Great Barrier Reef. So this was a study that was focused on One Tree Island Reef by the and this was on a University of Sydney facility. I'm going to steal a bit from No Idea here and ask, what do you think the QS ranking of the University of Sydney is?
Oh, it's in... Dave, you go first.
123.
30...
Don't you always say 69?
I do always say 69, but I'm going to go 54.
69 would have still been closer than Dave. It's
Really?
18.
18,
Oh,
yeah.
wow.
Yeah, that's very high up there. A lot higher than I was
Universities,
expecting.
Yeah.
And this study tracked 462 coral colonies during the summer, autumn and winter of last year, and it found that 66 and 80% of corals were found bleached during February and April. Then by 53%, then by July, 53% of colonies were considered dead. With this, some of them didn't make a recovery. They said 16% still recovered, and there were some coral species that would, or genuses that were disproportionately affected, most notably Acropora, which had 95% colony mortality. So this is very scary news.
Yeah.
Yeah, it continues to be a persistent issue. Especially, it seems like every month, once a month, we'll get a new story. It's saying another part of the Great Barrier Reef has been coral bleached, or some sort of spillage on a coastline has affected it. So it seems like it's taking a lot of damage at the moment.
Yeah.
It's kind of hard to say positive about it, honestly.
Yeah.
For context as well, this island is kind of like directly off the coast of Gladstone. I believe it was 120 kilometres, kind of like east of Brisbane, east of Gladstone, I should say. Corals, they're not doing too good at the moment, hey?
No. But the government's still hesitant to let UNESCO put it on a threatened threatened environments.
That's on my vision board. Thank you. Can we stop dancing around this issue? Because it seems, every month it is something new, and it's some new figure that just gets higher and higher at the percentage of it being affected. So manifesting, the government lets UNESCO put it on a threatened threatened list because it's there's so much damage already been done.
Yeah. At least it's better than when Campbell Newman was like, we don't care about the Great Barrier Reef. We are oil. We are coal. Let's dredge the barrier reef. So the small things, I guess.
Standards are pretty low.
It could have been a lot worse.
You're listening to Eco Radio, the radio of the future.
You are listening to Eco Radio, the radio of the future. Thank you, small child. You got to thank the small child.
Sorry.
You're so unappreciative sometimes, Issy and Zack.
You're so mean to me.
I've been saying thank you for weeks now. For weeks, we have to say thank you.
Thank you for joining in on that, Dave, as well.
Yeah. My pleasure. I've been wanting to.
You're listening to Eco Radio on 4ZZZ. Up next, we've got a little thing that I like to call an ode to the toad. So this is just a little poem that I've put together about some of my feelings towards cane toads, and it also tells like a brief history of cane toads in Australia themselves. So in 1935, 102 imported from Hawaii. Immediately it could be seen, or was not, kawaii. In the sugarcane fields, running amok was a beetle, but unlike Yoko Ono, the toad proved far less lethal. Yes, the cane beetle was up high, but the toad could not fly and was simply not that guy. Most food could not fill her. It even rivaled the very hungry caterpillar. To satiate its appetite, native wildlife that can fit in its mouth are eaten on sight. The native frogs that already lived in this abode say negative skibbity to the presence of the toad. Those that can eat frogs that are native, foul to their poison, as they are not adaptative. That's not how it's said, but I digress. Goannas, death adders, freshwater crocodiles, and even barramundi eat the toads, fall foul, and didn't resurrect like Jesus did on Sunday. The cane toad certainly seems to make everyone lose, especially between 2006 and 2013 with the New South Wales Blues. You would think it is all doom, but there are three things that would make even the Costco guys go boom. Some native animals are sigmas and can evade the poison, so slurp up the toad with some nice sauce of hoisin. The Ricali, keelback, and humble bin chicken give the toads a lickin', yet their stomachs do not sicken. Australian cane toad tadpoles are more likely to cannibalise, and this fact was used to create tadpole traps that lead to their demise. Lastly, to get adult toads, like nuts, you can always get bustin'. Head out at night with some friends that you trustin'. Try to grab the toad with your gang, but if you need to use your light and say flashbang, 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 use a stepped hypothermia to eradicate them ethically. They didn't choose to be here, so don't go on a torture spree. Issy and I went out on Sunday and seized 139. They have now been eliminated, but we had a great time. An estimated 200 million cane toads are now in Australia. Complete elimination is now considered a failure. Every cane toad removed makes our wildlife more content though, and it all helps our local environment. I'm finishing off this poem now saying I wish all Australian cane toads were dead. To hear more great things like this, subscribe to 4ZZZ.
Wow.
I spent most of the morning doing this. I was up at 1 a.m. just like tossing and turning in bed over what can I get to rhyme with freaking things in this. But I really like that.
Yeah, that was really good.
That was quite good.
Thank you.
It was very informative too.
Yeah.
For a poem.
That was, I'd put that on my fridge. That was very good.
I'm going to hold you to that. I'm printing this out.
Yeah.
But yeah, I hope you all enjoyed that. But that kind of summarizes lots of thoughts I have on the cane toads into quite a poetic form. So I thought it was pretty good.
Yeah.
I don't really have too much else to say on that, to be honest. Maybe we can talk about some of our cane toad busting on the weekend.
Yeah.
Elaborate on it, I should say.
Yes.
So Izzy and I went to Toohey Forest on the weekend. And
where did you start? Toohey Forest picnic area?
Yeah.
Yes, we did.
We spent like the first 20 minutes not finding any cane toads whatsoever.
So it was pretty dire. We kind of went through an adventures kind of, how do you say, like plot, where first 20 minutes we were quite discouraged because we couldn't find anything on the main paths, especially there'd been lots of cyclists, a lot of pedestrians, a lot of dog walkers, so it didn't surprise us. We then went off the beaten track, got a little lower towards where some of the creeks were. That's when we started seeking success.
Did you have anyone else show up?
We had my friend Adelaide, which I was very grateful for because the first 20 minutes I was so embarrassed. I was like, guys, I chose this spot and we can't find any. We heard more native frogs than we saw cane toads at the beginning, which is good.
Yeah.
That's great.
It was quite reassuring. It was like, this is really cool, but we also can't bust any of these. So we just kept trudging. We were there for about 3 hours.
Yeah. I think you and I got there about 6:15 and we left at about 10 o'clock or so.
Yeah. So we were there for quite a long time, but we found success mainly where bodies of water were. And where there was a little bit, I guess, more dense kind of bush terrain. It was, getting into it was kind of slow. We were all gloved up though, so safety first. We had dishwashing gloves on and gardening gloves on. And thank goodness, because it got very, very wet very, very fast. These guys were putting up a lot of fight, I would say, but there was a lot of peeing. I'll be honest. Multiple peed on my shoes.
Had it out for you.
Had it out for me. But I personally would never pick up a cane toad, just because they're pretty ugly little things. But after a while, you kind of got into a groove. And we had head torches, so we were able to kind of see a little bit of eye light shining back. And that made it a lot easier because some of these guys perfectly blended in.
Yeah.
So I would say, we had some big ones, some little ones. We had a real kind of literal mixed bag of cane toads. And after a while, it got, quite fun. Just kind of picking them up. Obviously, being respectful, not throwing them, abusing them, etc. Popping them in a bucket. And in that photo, we saw that large storage container as well. So Zack was hauling that across Toohey Forest. We went up to Griffith campus as well.
Just walking along the road there.
Just walking along the car, like that car park for a little bit. Didn't see any. But when we kind of delved back in and cut through Toohey Forest back up to the picnic area, surprising like high amount on that area. So we were doing it nighttime between like 6 and 10. So it was pretty populated after the sun went down. So
definitely make sure you're not out there too early. Otherwise you're probably not going to find any. You sort of need to hit that proper darkness for, first of all, to be able to like see them with the eye shine and that sort of thing, but also for them to be out. We did get fooled a number of times by suspicious cane toad shaped rocks though.
So we got hit with like cane toad fever for a little while, where every kind of short, squat looking rock, we were like, cane toad. It's a cane toad.
We were having cane toad withdrawals.
We were.
Cane toad fever,
Cane toad fever, So we also saw some cool spiders though. Zack was always kept a keen eye on a few really cool spiders that we saw. Some
very large huntsmans, because my mate and I, he goes there sometimes looking for big huntsman spiders, and that's where they are. If you just look up big eucalyptus trees a lot of the time, that's where you they find the big ones.
No snakes?
No snakes.
And we also spotted some fungus as well. Some fungi.
Nice.
That was really cool. I wasn't quite sure. We thought it was like someone's used sock or something, and then I went to go touch it and it was like a solid mass. And Adelaide, ever the keen eye, was like, I'm pretty sure it's a fungi. That was pretty cool.
I do live like 5 minutes from Toohey Forest as well, and I've gone for walks there during the day, but I have seen goannas there before as well. So removing those cane toads, which disproportionately affect goannas, because goannas are quite like large predators, always good for them. And this was quite a juvenile goanna, so it means they're not like, they're still breeding and that sort of thing.
Where do you guys stand on this adult toad busting versus the tadpole traps that water gummers made?
So the tadpole traps are definitely more effective at removing cane toads, just because you can get like a huge mass of them, like hundreds with just a single bucket. This is a lot more like proactive, compared to the bucket, which you can just leave there for a bit and then swipe it back up. Most of those tadpoles don't make it to adulthood, from what I've read as well. I think it's like 0.5 or 0.05% of cane toad tadpoles don't make it to adulthood. But then again, if you're getting rid of these adult cane toads as well, it means they're not going to be able to breed. Yeah. That sort of thing.
So it's kind of like intervening in two different cycles. So stopping them when they're little and then stopping them from breeding when they're larger. I think if you're looking for more of a, inactive procedure, tadpole traps will probably be the most ideal. And it looks like it's pretty much set and forget. Meanwhile, if you don't have 3 hours, I feel like that's also a nice, a good way to still get involved. But I think we were talking about it afterwards. Bushcare Roundup Bushcare tends to be pretty mindful, tends to be pretty relaxed. This was a little bit more intensive, a little bit more labour intensive, and it felt good seeing all the cane toads kind of rack up. And being able to physically pick an animal up and put them in a bucket was a little bit more, satisfying to me. So I found it was, I prefer adult cane toad busting, preferably, just because, it takes them out of that kind of cycle.
Yeah, I think Izzy and I discussed this as well, but we're interested in maybe making this into a monthly kind of event. We've had our frustrations before about the lack of night bushcare events because we're both not morning people. But it's just a good bit of fun as well.
And if this sounds interesting to you, our text line is 0420 626 733. Text in if you would prefer to see more PM kind of bushcare activities, including cane toad busting. Also, don't forget, we weren't the only ones who were cane toad busting. There's a whole week of it. Yeah. So I saw my local bushcare groups doing it on the Friday nights, people doing it on the Saturdays. Eventbrite had many events going on. So text in or drop us a line on the socials as well for your hauls of cane toads as well. Even if it's not stupidly large, over 100 cane toads, little goes a long way as well for these sorts of animals. So if you missed out on the action as well, it's still going, isn't it? Cane Toad Week.
It finishes up on Invasion Day. So just check out Eventbrite, check out your Facebook for local cane toad events. There's going to be something. Up next, we have a little thing that we like to call the Bushcare Roundup.
It's a Bushcare Roundup. They've been pulling out weeds and then they put in trees. It's the Bushcare Roundup.
So, as we were talking about earlier, there is the Great Cane Toad Bus that is set to finish up on the 26th of January. Check out your Facebook, check out your Eventbrite. There's going to be some cane toad events around in your area. And then on Thursday, the 23rd, from 9 till 10, we have the Sea Slug Survey in the Rocky Shores at John Laws Park, Burleigh Heads.
Go ahead.
On Saturday at 7 o'clock, you've got the Mookin-Bah Working Bee. That's 106 Greencamp Road, Wakerley. At 8 o'clock on Saturday, you have the Ozfish Oyster Recycling Working Bee. That's at Port of Brisbane Park. At 9 o'clock, you've got the Bushcare Working Bee for Chermside Hills Reserve. That's in Chermside West. And at 3:30, you have the Happy New Year Meet Working Bee at Salisbury Community Garden.
On Sunday the 26th at 8 a.m, there is the last Sunday Working Bee at 171 McConaughey Street in Mitchelton. At 9, there's Bushcare at Taringa Parade, Moore Park. At 189, Taringa Parade in Drapilli. At 10 a.m, the Invasion Day protest at Queen's Garden in Brisbane City. At 10 as well, the Feathered Friends Shorebird Adventure at the Boondall Wetlands Environment Centre in Boondall. At 3, Kangaroo Point Common Farm Working Bee and Potluck at 160A Wellington Road, East Brisbane. Finally, at 3, we have the Dutton Park Common Farm Working Bee at 381 Gladstone Road, Dutton Park.
That is it from Eco Radio today.
Yeah, if you missed any of those dates, do not hesitate. We are on the socials with our Bushcare Roundup infographic. So if you wanted to chase up any dates, any times, they'll all be on there.
And if you want to re-listen to this episode of Eco Radio, if you want to hear my fantastic poem again, you can check it out on... we have a podcast format. You can see that on any place that you get your podcasts.
Yeah.
Wherever you get your podcasts, as all the podcasters say. Or you can check it out on the 4ZZZ website.
And don't forget to subscribe to 4ZZZ as well.
Yeah.
This is all community run. And if you want to get a lovely warm inner glow this new year, then please go to 4ZZZ.org.au/support. Sign yourself up. And we'll catch you all next week